today's goal is to get this bed straightened out.
Well, today I'm going to be connecting the valves to the valve controller.
There's a lot of good stuff in it, like violets and hollyhocks and mums. There may even be a couple of, I can see a bachelor button over here. But there's also grass and junk. So my goal is to get this cleaned up and all set so I can lay down some irrigation and get some of the last of the flowers that I have started as seedlings done from the greenhouse. Oh, and I have a helper, because, you know.
I haven't worked with this specific kind of irrigation wire before, so it's going to be a little bit interesting. First step is I'm going to strip back this outer coating. You have to be careful not to cut through the insulation of the individual wires. Flies are getting bad this morning. Both kinds of flies, the biting flies and the common house flies. The house flies are after the little bit of steer manure that's in that compost. And we have 7 color-coded wires. White, red, blue, yellow, black, brown, and green. I'm going to use the black wire for the common for all of these connections. I stripped the insulation off the wire, and I'm going to go ahead and open these bundles up to the individual valves so that I can choose which wire I'm going to use for the common for the valves. Now remember, the valves are an AC powered valve, so it doesn't matter which side of the solenoid that I hook up as common. I select one wire from each of the valves to be the common. Now all I need to do is connect these together. But what am I going to use? Well, I'm going to go in the house and grab some very specific wire nuts that are used to connect these wires. And then there's another piece that goes over the top of those wire nuts to protect them from water. It's a little hard to see in this hole right now, but what I'm doing is getting ready to wire up the control signals from the irrigation controller that I installed a couple of days ago to these individual valves. Now there's two wires. They're both black wires. It doesn't matter which one I connect the common line to because either one will work. This is an AC, alternating current control signal. Now these little orange wire nuts are a specific size for this gauge of wire. You want to use the right size wire nut. Wire nut simply is a device that has some screw threads on the inside that will make the wires connect together very, very tightly. I've selected one wire from each of the two valves to be common wires. To connect them together, I put the wire nut on the wire and twist. All I need to do now is choose which color wire I'm going to use for which of these two valves. Now I want to make sure to make a note of which wires I'm using for which valve because I want to make this easy for us to hook up. Now I'm going to select the green wire to be the wire for the very first valve, and I'm going to assign that valve to the bed that goes up against the house and goes under the walkway going to the kitchen door. A booga booga monster just ran by. This wire's already stripped. There's the green wire. I strip it. I use another one of these orange wire nuts. Boy, the gnats are getting bad. Okay, the first valve is completely wired up. Now for the second one. Again, this wire is already stripped. There's a little bit of plastic on the end that slides off very, very easily. And I'm going to choose the next color. I'm going to use the blue wire for valve number 2. That wire stripped. I twist the wire nut on. When I twist it on, I want the two wires to twist around each other on the insulation. That way I know that there's a good connection. In theory, this valve box is all wired up and ready to go. Now I need to connect the wire on the other side and then connect it also to the controller. So it's really important that I keep track of which color I'm going to which valve. Time to get to the next bit. These wires are a little bit different to connect up. What I showed you in the previous valve box was the final connection going to some final valves. But this one I have two sets of irrigation wires that some of the connections need to go together and others need to go to these two valves right here. Now, these valves aren't going to be used until we excavate this bed and get more soil in it, but I still need to go ahead and do the connections now. So let's get started. I have the outer covering of the wire that goes to the first bed that I wired up. That's all off. And now what I need to do is connect the 3 wires that are used in that bed to this other wire here. So I go ahead and strip them off. That will be the green, blue, and black wires. You have to be careful not to nick these pieces of solid wire, because if you nick them, they'll break. You need to cut back and strip off the insulation. That's not quite long enough, so I'll need to strip a little bit more. There we go. Just like we did with the other 2 valves, I need to choose 2 wires from these 2 valves to be the common. Those are those 2 right there. Now it's a little bit different this time because I need to connect actually a total of 4 pieces of wire. Okay, so we now have the black wire that came from the first valve box here to the second valve box. I have the black wire that goes further over to the controller, and the 2 wires that I've selected for these 2 valves to be common. 2 more wire nuts, and I need to connect the green wire that goes over to the controller to the green wire that goes to the first valve box. I start twisting the wire nut on, and I hold the other 2 wires about an inch and a half away from the nut, and I continue turning. And that means that the wires eventually will twist around each other, and that's what I want. That helps hold it secure. Now for the blue wires, blue to blue, put the wire nut on, twist until the wires go around each other on the insulation. There we go. I now have the common from the first valve box going back to the controller. I have the green wire from the first control box connected here to go back to the controller. The same for the blue wires. Now that's all left to do is hook up these 2 valves. I'm going to choose to use the red wire to connect the first valve. The procedure is exactly the same as we've been doing. I put the black wire from the valve that's still not being used against the red wire for the controller. I start twisting the wire nut and twist and twist and twist until I have 1 or 2 turns on the insulation. I do the same thing for the other valve. These 2 valves aren't connected to irrigation yet. They're intended for use when we put in this next bed. That's not going to be for some weeks. We have a lot of other things to get done. We have the primary bed that we wanted to get done complete to the east here, and we have the iris and other flower bed over here hooked up to another valve, and I will be connecting that one up today. So the way I'm going to avoid having these particular valves get turned on is I'm not going to connect them to the controller, but they're connected here. Well, I guess it's time to get onto the controller.